Okay. See some familiar names here.
Yeah.
Right.
We also have friends from Sri KDU.
Yes.
Okay, it's 3 p.m. sharp. I think we should start. I think it tells so much about my character. Quick to the dot. Right. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Welcome again, as I can see, to the virtual academic series brought to you by UOW Malaysia KDU. Together with me today, I am very happy, blessed, and honored to have Miss Hema. Miss Hema has been my colleague for quite many years, and today she's going to share with you something that is of very much her passion. Today she's going to talk about flipped classroom and what a modified flipped classroom is. Now, before I pass the session to her, maybe I just want to speak a little bit about how this whole academic series came about. Now, what basically happened was the Teaching and Learning Center of all the UOW Malaysia KDUs, which encompass those in Penang and also in over here in Selangor, we thought of coming up with a series that we will be able to assist and contribute to the academicians and the challenges that they actually face while delivering online lessons. So we started off with these few questions, these few elements that we wanted to talk about. So on the 21st of May, the first session, the one that I held, I was discussing about the pre-delivery checklist. Now, the reason why we did the pre-delivery checklist was there was many discussions or webinars on best practices during the online lesson. So we didn't want to talk about during the online lesson. So what we did was we did the checklist, because what we thought about is the general concept about garbage in, garbage out. So if in the delivery, in the pre-delivery itself, we can ensure quality and consistent element of standard, then the delivery process itself would be much better. All right. So that was our first session. Then in the second session, this was done by our colleagues in Penang. I would like to thank Michelle and Nandy, who did a marvelous job on that. Basically, what they did was on online assessment. This was last week. Online assessment was something which we wanted to cover on elements like our lecturers and our colleagues were very much running on a face-to-face paper sit-down examination. So how could we have, how did we need to convert that into an online assessment, yet not forgetting nor losing the fundamentals and the belief of what the assessment was supposed to do? Because always remember, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, when we talk about assessment, we need to ensure that assessment is just not a checkbox process that, oh, we have done. No, there are key elements when we design assessment. What are the learning outcomes that we want to evaluate? How do we evaluate this? And how is this fair or is this correct for the student? So when we look into this being an online assessment, the whole goalpost has shifted from a face-to-face sit-down 2 hour paper a written paper, to now we do it online. So a lot of pedagogy that we actually learn or we actually practice based on online physical assessment, I'm sorry, was not feasible. So we needed to switch the mindset. Now, switching mindset, of course, was a bit of a challenge. So last week's session actually opened our eyes to the different types and styles of online assessment. Now, today we're looking at flip. Now, we have heard about blended. Okay, blended. I'm not talking about the juice, the blended juice itself, but blended learning. Blended learning is the merging of different styles of learning in the between students, and how we put the responsibility of learning itself at the students level. So when today, it's going to be a very interesting session, because today Hema is going to stress very much on what a flipped classroom is, a modified flipped classroom. How do we do it in this current environment, this environment that we are now in? Okay, now what environment are we in? I would not want to say social distancing. No, we are not practicing social distancing. We should never distance ourselves socially. This is called physical distancing. Yes, we are practicing physical distancing. As you can see, Hema and myself, we may be in the same office, but we're very, very far away to ensure at least 10 meters away. All right. So we are practicing physical distancing, not social distancing. So this is something very important in learning itself, because learning is a societal process. It's a societal process. You don't learn on your own. You learn with the influence of the other people all around you. So that is why I want to emphasize on this general key element on not social distancing, but more on physical distancing that we are in at the moment. All right. So this academic series we have break down into three parts over here. This is part one. This is a series of three sessions that we have. We are planning for our second session where we will get in experts of different fields over here at UOW Malaysia KDU itself. We have colleagues who are in the game school that are just brilliant in the way that they gamify their lessons. So I think it will be beautiful if we can get them in and share all of their knowledge with you. So a little bit on housekeeping. I shall not ramble on, because if you know me, if I start, I will never stop. A little bit about housekeeping. As you can see, there is this Q&A session, questions or a section over here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the Q&A section. Now, what we're trying to do is this: when Hema has a session, and you can ask your questions during the session itself, but we will try to handle the question as we go along. Sometimes what we will do is we will compile a similar style questions and we will answer it in one go. All right. So I hope this is fine. The whole session today should take roughly around 45 to 50 minutes, and the process is going to be interactive and fun. Without further ado, let me pass on to Hema. Hema, ball is yours.
Thank you, Gabriel. Hi, everyone. A little bit about myself before we start. I have been with KDU for 12 years, moving on to my 13th year. I've started on as a lecturer and then moving on to senior lecturer. I also did a little bit of leading the department. And today I'm glad to say that KDU, UOW Malaysia KDU has given me the chance to work with the Teaching and Learning Center to further establish or pursue my love for pedagogy. So this is one of our how to say one of our academic series that we would like to share with everyone on what we are doing here in KDU. It's not so much of a teaching or a workshop; it's more of a sharing and discussion session. Yeah. So without delaying it any further, let's look at today's session, the modified flipped classroom. So just to set a baseline of understanding among us today, I'm going to first define what flipped classroom is, so we are all on the same page before we move on to what modified flip is. Yeah. So this session is going to talk to us about, we're going to be sharing about how to modify a traditional flipped classroom to an e-flipped classroom. The key element to this is to ensure that we have a very good balance of guided and independent learning process, which is quite a challenge that I found during this MCO with online learning, remote learning. So let me share with you how we do it here, and maybe you can also share with me how you have been doing it on your end. Yeah. So formally, this is one of the official definition of flipped learning. So I would like to draw your attention to the underlined terminology because that is the core of flipped classroom. So we want to emphasize on group learning space. We want to also have individual learning space. Both these learning spaces should be dynamic, interactive, and guided. The key element to the dynamic and interactive environment is that we need to know how to engage our students creatively. A lot of this is not something we are comfortable with because today our students are on Instagram and Facebook and you name it, they are on it. And we come from the generation that we are using it as a sub-social channel while they are using it as their primary socializing channel. So we need to know how we can integrate and fall into their world so they don't get tired of sitting in front of the laptop just looking at slides and working on their LMS system throughout the day. It has to be something that they want to look at eventually. So traditionally, we do the easy bit in class. So we give our lectures, we give our slides, we also do basic theoretical work within the classroom. So we are covering the lower level of blooms in class, and then we give them a homework to be done at home. And this homework is normally of higher blooms level, the more difficult things. So when we talk about flipped classroom, we are talking about flipping this whole thing where they do the easy things at home and we work on the difficult parts with them in class. So how does this pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy and the flipped classroom model apply in an actual classroom, in the real settings? So this is how it goes. From what we used to do face to face before this COVID-19, today we upload pre-recorded lectures, we upload reading tasks. Reading tasks can be in terms of articles, websites, links, could be even podcasts that we want to upload. A lot of teachers assume that this is very hard work because they have to create all this. It takes a lot of time to create all this. But let me tell you, most of us actually survive this season by using existing sources. So don't be afraid to use existing sources. There are many sources out there that will fulfill your needs. You just have to tweak it a little bit here and there. Then we also do Q&A in class. So this is then flipped to become more of a reflective work. Like maybe you give them a reflective journal, a peer-to-peer discussion where the students teach their friends, comment on each other's work, or work together collaboratively. There are many websites and applications that support these kind of work as well, right? And what we used to give as homework or projects are now flipped into instructor supported classroom activities or presentations by students themselves. So a lot of this, we don't have to do it like we are doing in class. What we can do is we can ask them to pre-record their presentations and submit to us later on or share with their friends later on. So moving on further into this is what is exactly flipped in a flipped classroom. We are flipping our teacher's role from a lecture role to a tutorial role. What happens in this role is teachers now play the role of a facilitator, not so much of the knowledge giver, but the ones who facilitate the knowledge that they have learned. So it's important that we learn how to teach them direct problem solving, hands-on activities, interacting that helps with students. So these kind of things will immediately sort out misconceptions that may occur when they study. So how to flip? This is a question that I received during Gabriel's session. Many participants asked me, can you tell us a little bit about how to flip a classroom? These are the three basic methods of flipping a classroom, right? So the first one is you must create context. Whatever that you need to create context, prior knowledge, to create prior knowledge, you give them to read it before your class. Normally, it is done offline. Okay? Then you flip and engage it in an actual classroom. You have an online video lesson. You have got discussions, comprehension, questions, note taking. Some of us even have students writing maybe a particular paragraph or answers during that online video lesson itself. And then the third one is when they go back after our lessons and they look at how to use what they have practiced in class. Now, these three basics of flipped classroom remains even in the modified flipped classrooms. The only difference is that instead of offline, online, and offline swaps of modes, now everything is almost offline. We can give them offline work like read this chapter before you come to class or before you meet me. But these instructions are still done online, right? So what is a modified flipped classroom.
Emma,
Yeah, so
does
before we
you
move
handle
on
some
to this,
questions?
before we move on to this, I was hoping to address certain questions about what is flipped itself before we move on to the modified version.
All right. I would just like to handle one of these questions over here by one of our colleagues
Mhm.
who are part of the participants over here who would like to know. This is from Kwan Yi. Please share what are the suitable websites, or are there any specific applications or websites that that could encourage the students to do flip?
Oh, definitely. Actually, I'm coming on to that slide in a bit, Kwani.
Okay, all right.
Alright.
There's another question here that actually identify when we talk about flipped classroom, basically, does it mean that the student must know the fundamental element of the knowledge first? That means all the must knows. So they have to know the theory first. Is that right?
Um,
Of the what they're trying to mean is of the course. So if you are teaching marketing, for example, so the students must have they should prepare themselves or start reading about the theories of marketing so that when they come to class they'll be able to apply those theories.
Um, to a certain extent, yes. Because this is what in a flipped classroom, right? It's one of the four pillars of flip where we talk about intentional content. The educator will decide what kind of content the student must handle on their own and what content that we have to help them with. There
Okay.
are certain low-level content which is quite self-explanatory. They just take time to read or view video. What I do in class, I give them a reading material, and for those who just cannot survive reading, I give them a video.
I think that is very good because there is a lot of misunderstanding that what people think is when flip means everything is student do on their own. So it is not. No. So as what you say, it is very true. It's very clear that there are quite a few components that we as facilitators we must still guide the students in those
Yeah.
elements. Okay.
Actually, our role as teachers, when I spoke about what actually flipped, right? The role of us as educators, right? We are now doing more of facilitation. Just
Mhm.
because we ask them to do something before our face-to-face lesson, it doesn't mean that we don't monitor it. We
Correct.
still have to monitor what they are doing before they enter class. So the platform that you choose to ask them to do a particular task, you must have access to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that way you will be able to spot the errors or help them sort out issues that they are facing at that point itself rather than find out during your face-to-face lesson. If
Mhm.
you have to repeat everything you expected them to do beforehand during your face-to-face lesson, that is a waste of time. That is when you don't have time to cover your syllabus, you don't have time to complete what you have planned for your face-to-face lesson, and you are discouraging students from working independently before your class because they know you're going to repeat it. So what's the point of watching it or reading?
And yeah, and during the face-to-face class is where you do meaningful discussion lah.
Yeah.
That is the critical part of a flipped classroom.
Have you ever had students, even us as students before, right? We would so completely understand what our teachers were saying in class. Then when we go back home to do the task, we are like, oh my God, I understood everything she said in class, but now I'm unable to do it. Have you ever been in that situation? I'm sure all of us have. I remember being in that situation. This is what flip will solve. The student will not feel that sudden struggle that they didn't expect to face once they come back home. This flip classroom will solve that problem because you are there to help them for the difficult parts, not for the easy ones. That one they can deal on it on their own.
Right.
Right?
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, we have modified flip classroom. So what is modified flip classroom? In this visuals that I presented to you, you can see the student taking notes during a flipped classroom. And then you can also see how a teacher is showing them what was written. These are different methods or activities that are involved in an actual flipped classroom because normally in class, what happens is even if you flip a classroom, a traditional classroom, the students are there to show it to you and you go there to see it. But in this case, do you see the student showing it on camera to you? So these are the modifications that we have to do and expect. The expectations of certain feedback, how feedback is going to be given, how we want to look at monitoring process. This must be considered in a flexible environment. Okay, I will come to that. The features of flexibility that we need to apply when we do our modified flip, especially when we're doing remote learning. Yeah. So So why do we want to flip in the first place? Why can't we just have a traditional lesson and move on with life? The problem with the traditional lesson is um, it's just like you cannot flip every lesson in your syllabus. You also cannot, not cannot, it's also not efficient to do every lesson in a traditional manner. So when we talk about flipped classroom, we are not telling you every lesson you have has to be flipped. No. You will have to pick and choose as subject experts which to flip and which to keep traditional. Because as the syllabus moves on, develops throughout the semester, there will be topics that are very hard to grasp. For that, use your traditional methods. No harm in it. Flip is an option for you to speed up which parts of the syllabus that you can speed up, right? So, like I told you earlier, you have students who are asking us, how do I do this at home? So, we flip because we want to help them with the hard stuff, hard part of the lesson. So, we want to look at how the teacher is able to best assist the students when they are struggling at that point itself with the right source, which is you, the teacher. You are the right source to solve and help them with what they are struggling. You can do that immediately on and on real time without having them to attempt something knowing that they are going to fail in it and then come back and prove to you that they have failed in it. So that's very demotivating. With this flip, you are able to give them more encouragement and confidence that don't worry, I'm here, you can do it. So this is very important. Okay. Then the next one is to spot errors, mistakes, misconceptions. This you can do very easily because you're watching them apply knowledge that they've already done. So normally when I give them a reading article or video to view, I don't wait until my face-to-face session to ask to check if they have had any misconceptions or errors. I actually follow up with a quiz or a discussion before my face-to-face. So I already know whether they have done that work, right? Then of course, some of them may not be able to respond immediately. So when I start my face-to-face class, I would always ask them with the first question is, which parts of this content are you having trouble with? So you are able to immediately solve those problems, right? And because with Flip, right, you are given a lot of opportunity to monitor their learning. You are able to immediately intervene and prevent further problems. You don't let it develop because you're monitoring them before you see them with the work you've given. You're monitoring them during, you're monitoring them after, right? And the last one is to give your students questioning opportunities. This is very, very important because you have good students who have throughout the academic year developed their questioning strategies by very openly asking you, very confidently asking you. And then you have the those who had like an average set of students who are facing trouble understanding and there are some misinterpretations. These people would have learned how to explain things further, especially explaining what they didn't understand because they've had access to the materials before. So they will be able to point out to you which part of the lesson they couldn't understand. And then the students who took the content to a way higher level, a new level, these helped my students spark their curiosity. They started asking me questions that are beyond their syllabus even, just to show that okay, Miss, I'm very intrigued with this content. I want to learn more. What if this happens? What happens if that I change this variable? So I realized that learning was beyond the syllabus. And these are the three reasons why I would encourage you to flip personally, because these are good points that I have personally experienced. Yeah. So earlier on, we were talking about the four pillars of flip. These are actually the four pillars of flip. These are core basics for your flip lessons to be successful. So the first one is flexible environment. In this pillar, you have to be able to allow your students to choose when and where they want to learn. How are they going to do this learning? So what we would normally give our students say one day in advance, okay, I'm giving you this document, go and read it. Tomorrow when you come to class, I'm going to ask you about it, test you about it. But now we need to be wary. We need to be a little bit more conscious about broadband issues, connectivity issues. So what I would advise is at least a 5 day period where they can have time to access, view, understand, respond to what you want them to do. And then the next one is the classroom, the learning culture. With Flip, right, we are trying to explore the deeper, the more complex part of the syllabus or the content. So we are looking at learning opportunities, which is not just for exam based. We want their knowledge to stay memorable. So what we do, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so what we do is we allow students to personalize their learning. We allow them to evaluate their learning. These two is very important to me because I find that when my students can personalize their learning and evaluate their learning, it becomes more meaningful to them. They get to decide this is more important to me. This is what I need to focus on. So there's a lot more focus. The next one is intentional content. This is where just now I was telling you about how we decide which information students can deal with, which information we need to help them with. So you realize, right, today information is at their fingertips, you know. They have Google, they have access to all kind of things. We really don't need to teach them. Half of the technology that I have learned, half of it is what my students taught me. So I have students who have come up with brilliant work during their presentation and all. So a lot of things that we assume we need to teach them, especially skill based, they already have. So we, knowing their capacity, should be able to decide. Okay, look, go Google this, go get this from there. Lead them to the right path, especially if you're doing a little bit of research. Tell them not to just use Google. Tell them to use Google Scholar. A little bit of guidance that will put them in the right way, but they will get it done because they love the online system. They just don't like to sit in front of us and talk to us like this. All right. Then we have professional educators, which is the last pillar of Flip. So in this case, we want to look at the role of the educator. As professional educators, what earlier on we took for granted that we could determine certain things from the facial expression, body language, even even when students are not paying attention, we can pick it up by just looking at them. Whether they're spacing out, they're just staring at you, they're staring at the board, we can do that. With this remote learning system, we need to be able to observe students through their feedback. So feedback here is so important. We need to be able to distinguish which feedback is valuable, which is just done for the sake of it. Right? So assessment of their work is very important. Don't delay that. Try to give them immediate feedback on their assessment. This will help them move on. Otherwise, it will be like a circle that they have to keep coming back to. It's like a never-ending circle. They have to keep revisiting certain elements of their content when they are actually already done and they just want to move on. I've submitted this, I want to move on. You don't want that because if it's just about that, that's when it becomes meaningless.
Emma, there's a question over here
Ah,
you can handle. Is the question asks, how do you get students to practice flip if they are so used to on the traditional element of learning? Many of our students will just sit in class and just want to be taught. So how do you implement or influence the students to accept this flip practice?
I personally talk to my students beforehand. I create a repo. I ask them which platforms they are comfortable with because I have two extreme groups of students. Some who don't want me anywhere near their social media. Don't add me, I'm going to block you, that kind of students. Then there are another set of students who won't leave me alone. They will stalk me on social media. So I know which group of students I can use certain platforms. So it also to a large extent depends on the kind of students you have and the capacity of that group of students. If you have a mixed classroom or mixed ability classroom, you need to be able to strike a good balance. So when you give task, right, you have to give them, you have to scaffold the task. You cannot just drop them in the deep end and say, go and figure this out. The moment you do that, they will say that you are not teaching me, I'm doing my own teaching. So that's not fair. We can't do that either. So we need to break down certain tasks into smaller bits and then develop it to a higher end. The most important thing is we want students to know is we are looking for mutual benefit. The idea of flip is not to reduce my work or to increase their work. The idea of flip is to give them the best of the module in the best way we can think of. And methods are proven successful, more successful than not. Yeah. We just have to make sure they understand. That's very important. You can't just do flip overnight. You have to work it out with your students, plan it out with your students, find out what problems they are having, and then work around that problem. It has to be communicated.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So then how does a traditional flip look like? This is what a traditional flip looks like, where the students are working on a task and the teacher is moving around as a facilitator. But now we can't do that, right? So how does a modified flip look like? This is how my modified class looks like. All right, so I'm using Instagram with this particular group of students. So you can see that in task one, I gave them a poem actually. I gave them a poem and I told them, okay, I want you to find the metaphorical conceit. And then once you find it, you share that answer on your Insta story and you tag me. So when I did that, I realized that they were quite excited to see how their social circle will react to an academic task on their social media. But they did it anyway. I told them, give me a chance. Let's try it out and see. If it doesn't work, we won't do it again. So it worked because uh, unexpectedly we found people making fun, making jokes, and then some wanted to find out what's a metaphorical conceit. What poem are you reading? So this created a buzz, an online buzz. I liked it because with that buzz, I could further extend their interest onto that poem and take it to through many different levels. So when that worked, the second task was a drama. Um, so with the drama, I told them to find a quote that they liked best and then share it on Insta and challenge their friends to interpret it. What they were doing is from early on when they were just giving me answers and triggering curiosity from other people, in the second task, I got them to facilitate the interpretation, respond to the interpretations that they receive. A lot of fun and jokes, but a lot of curiosity as well. And I realized that the interaction happened from people of various backgrounds, their aunts, their cousins, their nieces, different ages, different backgrounds, different people from different places. They all started responding. And when they came to class to see me, they were like, Miss, do you know? This is what they said. So funny, they don't even know the play. So when they started critiquing, it became like it helped me help them understand. If you don't know your text, this is the mistakes you can be making. So in order for you to analyze the text, the first very basic information is you need to know your text. Then you can justify your statements. So they realized that very easily because of the engagement that it created. Then another session I did with them was on our LMS system itself. This, if you look at this part here, I don't know if you can see, it says find codes for each of the themes above. This particular one is when I used open learning to get the students to identify codes from the novel that they're studying. So this, I didn't want to use my class time for them to find. They can do this on their own. So when they put in their answers, I am able to check before I see them in class. Right, so these are the lower levels materials that I know they can deal with it on their own. I just need to check before the class so that I can correct them beforehand. And then finally, you see them on screen actually writing it out, asking me questions, analyzing, writing samples, sharing the samples with each other. So the last session is almost like a consultation happening. So this development really got me excited because then it also became like a learning without borders. It wasn't that I cannot be part of their social media. I was part of their social media. They were tagging me. It wasn't that I don't want to use LMS system anymore. No, because they wanted to do all the easy part before class so that they could highlight the important things at home during class. So I realized that they took ownership of their learning during our flip. And this didn't happen online, it slowly only developed. So, any questions so far about this?
Oh,
No.
okay,
Okay.
Emma.
All right. So then earlier on, Kwani asked, right, what tools are needed to flip a lesson? What kind of tools? So if you guys are aware of any tools that you are using, please share with us in the comment section so we can also learn from each other. Yeah. But these are some of the tools that I found shared by by a local private institution in Glenmarie. This compilation I found very interesting because they had compiled information like capacity, costing, the key features. It was so easy for me to decide which I wanted to use by just looking at this table. So this, I really thank them for this compilation. It was very useful for me. And some other tools like this in this view that you're looking at, I found this on Pinterest. So I've tried some of this out, and I found very useful for certain ones. Then I even actually the reason I use Pinterest because of their easy access infographics. Infographics are like very already pre-made, ready material that you can use that's already beautified for you. You don't have to do any designing. All you got to do is acknowledge the source. So most of it comes with the source already embedded in the infographic itself, right? Okay, and we are talking about assessment. Not all about flip is about teaching. A lot of it is about assessment, formative assessments that we can give feedback to. Remember earlier I was telling you don't delay your feedback. Try as much as possible to give them almost immediate feedback. These are some of the applications that you can use to give to gather feedback and to give feedback. Of all this, I found out that recap is no longer available, but the rest of them are still available. Some need to use you need to log in and sign up and all. Some requires in-app purchases, but most of it are really interesting. Like for an example, Verso. This is a page for submission of formative submissive assessment. It can be sent privately, it can be open for peer review, it can be used for collaborative work. It's quite interesting, right? What else? You have I used Kahoot and Poll Everywhere in the past, and I found that it was overused. So I also got bored. My students also got bored. Then we decided to venture out into Zoho Forms and Nearpod. Yeah. Then recently I also tried exam.net. Exam.net is when I need my students to actually write essays for me, like exam style essays. So what I did is I put in the excerpt and the question, and the students were doing the test within a timeline. So once the time is up, there's a forced submission done. This I find really useful, especially I want to give them timed assessment practice. Most of the time, I cannot see if they're doing it within 1 hour, but in this case, I can control that. So within 1 hour, you have to submit your answers. This is very useful because for examination, especially external examinations, like I teach Cambridge literature, so they only have 1 hour to answer one question. So that timing, that practice within that particular time was so important to us. And I used to do it in class, but now with exam.net, I don't have to waste class time anymore. All right?
I believe, Hema, there was a questions pertaining to the applications. I'm trying to see the question. It was here and it went, but the question was pertaining to what are there types of free applications for practicing flip. I believe we have already covered that earlier on. And also now these are the various applications like Kahoot, Verso, Socrative Teacher, and so on. Most of these are also free applications, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think just to add in one part here is pertaining to the importance of formative feedback. Okay, because in every stage that we go as we teach, we need to get feedback from the students, and these applications will further, in a way, give us assurance that the students are at of a certain level of the learning itself. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. It's very
Good.
important that for us to gauge whether they got the information in the right manner. Are they able to apply? Because information getting and information application are two different things.
You are correct.
Yeah, a lot of people know they can talk about it, they can talk about the subject matter, but you ask them to apply it according to how you need them to apply it, they are unable to. So these are the applications that help us determine exactly where in the application we need to help them out.
So as a practitioner, maybe I would like to you have 9 applications over here, correct? If I
Yeah,
have to ask you to recommend one, which one will you say will be the best for a novice to want to use as a good app for feedback?
I would advise Socrative teacher.
All
That
right, all right.
for me was the easiest actually because it is more versatile. I can do MCQ, I can do a space race like it's like a game. The template is all there. You just have to key in your data.
Good, good.
Yeah, and then I can also do out of door tasks. Like for example, I can give them a task and say if you want attendance to this lesson, you have to do this out of door class.
That's very good.
Yeah.
That's very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that from the horse's mouth itself. Apprentice teacher, that's the one to use.
It is easier, but after some time, you want a variety. You as an educator also, you can kind of get bored with the same thing that you're using, which is why I moved away from Kahoot and Poll everywhere. It was getting too cliche. And every teacher was using it also, so they were kind of bored. The excitement I faced when they were using Kahoot at the beginning was lost towards the end already. So I didn't want to drag that any further. The idea of flip, especially remote learning, is you must keep them interested, the engagement part. And for that, you need variety. These kids don't have a long attention span or a long interest span. So you need to keep them excited about something. So when they test out new platforms which are easy to use, they are very cooperative. They want to try it out with you. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Okay.
But I also kind of create a build up. Like I tell them, okay, next class we're going to try something new. Okay, you all stand by for it. This is what we're going to do. I give them like a background a bit, and they're like, okay, okay, miss, okay, let's try this out. So you need to be excited because if you are not, they will see that you are not. You're doing it just for the sake of it. I think that transcends when you are excited and hung up about something and committed to something. They can actually recognize that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on. So I wanted to talk about the challenges that you faced or expect to face in a modified flipped classroom. So if you can share your experience with us, then maybe we can address some of the experiences that are common to us and help you solve your challenges. So while you are doing that, there are some hurdles that we want to talk on. For example, the common ones like access. I've highlighted access specifically because we want to make sure your students have access, Wi-Fi access. You remember the first flip I was telling you about? It has to be students, the environment has to be flexible enough so students can manage when and how they want to learn, where they want to learn. So a lot of them these days that I've experienced had Wi-Fi connectivity issues. So this is something I have no control of. And to a large extent, the students also are struggling to control. So I give them enough time, ample time, like a week for them to access so they can go, if they're going to McDonald's to pack their food, they can download the document, or if they have a hotspot, their parents' hotspot that they can share, then they do that. But if I expect them to do it now, everything now, right? I think I will be setting myself and my lesson up for failure right from the start. So that flexibility is very important. We need to consider who doesn't have alternatives. Recently, I had an online assessment and the student just couldn't access the page. She had internet connection and everything, but just no access to the page. So then we did it, we sent her the document over another platform. So that flexibility is very, very important. Okay, and then next you have to teach them how to read or watch or listen, because if you give them a video and you tell them view this video, these kids will watch it like they're watching Netflix. 30% only, and that is if you're lucky. So we need to give them like a guided question. So what I normally do is I give them like four questions that will focus their attention in a video so that they know what they're looking out for, right? That way they're reading or they're watching it. It's all very focused. It's not just blindly watching something for entertainment, right? Then safeguards. Always consider what if. The what ifs are a major part of the success of your lesson. So if you are giving them notes, look at how many different ways you can share the notes with them. If you're conducting a quiz, can it be a quiz that they can do at their own time? If you want discussions, what if a student cannot join the particular platform? So how else do you want to do the discussion? Must it always be a face-to-face discussion? Can it be an online discussion where they can just type out their answers and like an online forum? How are you going to set up these online forums? Look at all of these options and do not do not aim for perfection. I personally feel that perfection kind of becomes very robotic. So a little imperfection makes you human, and they see that, oh, my teacher is not that perfect robot as well, so I'm not so afraid of making mistakes of my own either. I think that understanding must be there as well, right? And I'm a teacher who doesn't mind saying that, oh, okay, I think I've made a mistake. Let me get back to you on that. I don't mind saying that because I think they have realized that if I can correct my errors, they also can correct their errors. But don't overdo it because then they will start thinking you don't know what you're talking about. All right. Um, you start small. The last one is start small. Don't go ahead and flip an entire topic. Flip one small part first. See how the students manage it, and then you decide how you want to give variety to it. Um, my key element here is variety because of what I mentioned earlier. You must have individual learning, you must have group learning, you must have interaction, creative interaction. So if you give variety and you are fair to the variety that you're giving them, then flipped classroom shouldn't be a problem, right? So has anyone shared any challenges that they have been facing or they expect to face?
Not yet, because I believe our colleagues over here are well versed in doing the this kind of blended flip kind of environment. But I just want to stress a little bit on the first one that you highlighted over there, which is access. I think access is critical. That means the pre-delivery checklist lah.
Yes.
Like if you're talking about the academic series, the first series that we actually talked about, many a times we tend to neglect that part. We tend to neglect the preparation component, and then we just go blindly into the delivery itself. And what happens is when you go blindly into the delivery, not checking the environment, the infrastructure, the access that you have, then there is a high chance or high level of failure. So it is very important, ladies and gentlemen, as what Emma has said, you need to ensure everything is working perfectly, from your applications to your internet connection to the aircon temperature to the lighting to even children running around. So all of this creates an environment that is favorable and feasible to do online and also flip kind of classroom. Yeah,
Um, with access, you must also think about how long they have that access.
yeah, true.
I've had students who ran out of data.
Mm,
Yeah, and then because I knew they were going to run out of data, I could preempt them. Look, you're going to need to top it up because you need this much more.
mm,
So 90% of the hurdle can be solved if you have communication with your students. Don't be a touch and go teacher. That's most important. You have to be committed to it. I can understand it's not easy to check on hundreds of students. That's impossible. But ask them generally, give them options to highlight certain issues that they are facing so you can overcome that in or suggest solutions beforehand. Okay?
Okay.
Can we move on?
Yep.
Okay. So I've had a few colleagues asking, why have you been so into flipped classroom? And these three letters are why. These three letters are self-explanatory. Actually, when we were first acquired by UOW, the first thing you asked me to do, Gabriel, was to check out, look at what they have been doing in terms of pedagogy, because then we can try and adapt certain methods and progression. And the first thing that I saw when I checked them out was flipped blended learning. There's an ocean of information out there on how UOW has been implementing and studying it on their official website. You can just go there and look it up. There are even DIY steps on how to start, baby steps on how to start, where you can get ready materials to use, like Khan Academy, So these are sources that our parent company has researched, invested, and established several best practices. And most of these practices are proven more successful than not. So it doesn't only encourage us, but it also motivates us to consider moving forward to better learning approaches. Most of us in this webinar are tertiary educators. So we are looking at not just pedagogy, but we are looking at heutagogy. So we want to look at how young adults learn. We want to look at how we as technological immigrants are going to teach our technological natives on it's like entering territories that we are adopting while they were born into. So that's a little challenging. So it will do us a lot of good if we can read up on how others have also survived it, succeeded in it, and they are even open to sharing. So even way before this lockdown and this MCO, we have done a lot of sessions on flip and blended learning simply because UOW had already moved on and we were wanting to try and catch up. So in that sense, I have to thank them because if we didn't have that pre-site, we wouldn't have been this ready to move on quite seamlessly into our remote learning and teaching. So for that, I must say that there were so many online skills that I developed that I never had even thought of before. You know, so yeah.
Good.
uh, that's all I have for today actually on flipped classroom.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Thank you very much for your attendance here today. What's going to happen is this whole session is recorded, and our administrator Hazim will send all of this to all the participants today. Thank you very much again for attending the academic series, the first academic series of UOW Malaysia KDU. We hope to come up with the next set of series with of the experts from UOW Malaysia KDU. Some of them are even participants here today. I see Miss Idora in as one of the attendees. Now, she is an expert in gamification. So one day, I hope to get her in. Correct, Hema? We hope to get her in to speak to you
Yes.
about gamification. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Have a very good day, and please feel free to contact us anytime that you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining me in this hour.
Yes.
And thanks for sharing some of your pointers with us too. We will definitely be looking into it. Here are some of the resources I've referred to. Some of it are free for your download. So go ahead. Take care and have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.